Something I like to look at every season before making my fantasy football draft guide and drafting my teams come August and I do all my drafts in August, really, except for best ball in June and July. But something I like to look at is the Vegas lines for season-long yards and touchdowns and receptions props for fantasy football players, because a lot of the time you find something very weird with ADPs compared to season-long stat predictions. And I'll just dive right into it. The first one, for me, Jeudy is valued at the wide receiver 38, and Deebo Samuel is valued at the wide receiver 39. So pick one pick away from each other, one click, and you're on my team. One pick difference. Both of their receiving touchdown line is 3.5, and Deebo's receiving touchdown. Deebo's receiving yard line 699.5, and Jeudy 949.5. Now, obviously, Deebo Samuel will have some rushing upside and maybe a couple hundred rushing yards and extra rushing touchdown or two, but that's not enough to skew this huge difference with receiving yards and touchdowns for me. Now, I have my own side agendas where I'm not a big fan of Deebo. 30% of his career production comes from that one season where he had 1,400 yards and went nuts. Been a while since we've seen that. He's aging. He wasn't the same last year. I'm not really in on him. Jeudy, on the other hand, coming off a bit of a breakout season. So I have my own opinions, but I think that this is at least worth noting for any of you trying to evaluate your opinions on Deebo and Jeudy, is that these guys are one click away, but Jeudy is expected to get a lot more passing volume. So for me, that's worth noting, right? I think that's a big enough difference to be like, that's interesting. So that was just the first one and probably the smallest one I noticed. The next one is David Njoku and Travis Kelce. They have the same exact receiving yard lines at 699.5. And David Njoku, his line for receiving touchdowns is one higher than Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce is valued as a top 6 tight end despite coming off by far his worst season yet at 34 years old, about 800 yards, only 3 touchdowns, had a bunch of duds for you last year. And David Njoku, on the other hand, has finished top 5 in the last 2 seasons, despite being on a terrible offense, and is going to have a lot more target volume this season, in my opinion. He goes as the tight end 11, which is multiple rounds after Travis Kelce. So I had already decided that I personally like Njoku more than Kelce. I think Kelce has a bunch of red flags, which I'll get to in my avoid video where I'll be talking about Kelce. In my target video, I'll be talking about Njoku, so I'll elaborate more there. But yeah, Kelce didn't do much with Rashee Rice healthy. Now he's going to be back. Xavier Worthy broke out. Marquise Brown is going to be back. Isaiah Pacheco is going to be back. He saw a huge dip in volume despite all these injuries last season, and now everyone's back. I think he's going to be a dud this season. He's going to be touchdown or bust. And Njoku, on the other hand, what competition does he have outside of Jeudy? Not much. I think there is a safer floor with David Njoku, but I just once I saw this, I was like, man, that really furthers my agenda as to why Njoku should be a better tight end than Kelce. He's literally has a better projected season-long prop, and he goes 30-plus picks after Travis Kelce. So make sure you take a note of that. And before the next ones, getting these receiving yard lines on Underdog Fantasy, you can get up to $100 free to lock in these picks higher or lower than. If you join with the code FORTUNE, the link will be down below, or you can just type in FORTUNE on your own. Get about $100 free to either do this or do some fantasy football drafts. Best ball, you can enter a pool for $3 that will be free if you get your money doubled by joining with my code, and you could turn it into a couple of grand. And I'll be doing best ball drafts on this YouTube channel To elaborate more on what that is, if you have any questions, drop them below. The third one I want to talk about is Davante Smith and Calvin Ridley. Now, their receiving yard lines, a 25-yard difference, with Calvin Ridley having a higher receiving yard line and Davante Smith having one more touchdown, 6.5 touchdowns, and Ridley 5.5 touchdowns. Very, very, very similar. Now, the thing with this is receptions, right? Oh, well, what about receptions? So this is going to be standard scoring ADP, meaning receptions don't matter in standard scoring. So it's just receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. They have pretty much these same lines, yet Davante Smith goes as wide receiver 24, and Calvin Ridley goes as wide receiver 36. Now, I have these guys pretty close in my rankings, and I don't think, there's a huge fade or a huge target. I don't have any side agendas for this one, but this one definitely skewed me on how much of a value Calvin Ridley is. If you can take him 12 wide receivers after Davante Smith and possibly get the same exact production. I mean, he's the clear wide receiver 1 with a quarterback upgrade, the number 1 overall pick. Ridley was number 1 in air yards last year, and Cam Ward was one of the best deep ball passers in college football last year. So that's nice. And, for the Eagles, there's A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert in the receiving game. When they're both healthy, Smith's stats take a huge hit. The passing volume was bottom 5 all of last season. They didn't need to throw the ball because they run through Saquon Barkley. I think there are some risky red flags here for Davante Smith. So, if it comes down to it, I need a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, whatever it may be. I'm going to be in Davante Smith's on the board. I might be like, how about I wait another round or two and target Calvin Ridley, who could have the same production. The next one, 4 out of 6, comes down to quarterbacks. So Dak Prescott goes as the quarterback 12, Justin Herbert quarterback 14, and Trevor Lawrence quarterback 19. Dak is at 3,850 passing yards, and the other two are at 3,700. Pretty similar, a little more for Dak Prescott. Passing yard touchdowns, Dak 25.5, Herbert 23.5, Lawrence 22.5. I would say, for the most part, those are pretty similar lines, but obviously Dak has a bit of an edge, and so that's the reason he does an ADP. Now, me personally, I'm in on Dak Prescott this year. Again, I will elaborate on that on my target video coming out soon on why Dak is in for a hell of a year. But I would say those align somewhat well, right? They're pretty close. Again, though, if you want to wait for Herbert or Lawrence, you do you. But the point in this is the fourth quarterback, Matt Stafford. Passing yard lines, 3,800. So 100 more than Herbert and Lawrence and 50 less than Dak. Passing touchdowns, 24.5. That's more than Lawrence, more than Herbert, and just one less than Dak Prescott. And I think it's pretty obvious none of these four have much rushing upside. Should have pretty similar rushing, probably Herbert and Lawrence a little bit more than the other two. But that's not enough to skew how weird this is, considering Matt Stafford's ADP is QB 24. Now, we know in 2021, Stafford was an MVP candidate, threw for, I think, 4,800 yards and 41 touchdowns. That was the Cooper Cup Triple Crown season. They won the Super Bowl. The next season, Cup dealt with injuries. The next season, Puka came in. Stafford dealt with injuries. Cup dealt with injuries. Last season, they were extremely injured. They started out, 1-4, 1-5, something like that. It was only Stafford and Kyron healthy on that offense. And finally, Puka and Cup came back. Cup wasn't the same. Blah, blah, blah. Stafford wasn't the fantasy gem that I thought he would be as a late-round dart throw. But I'm throwing it back again this season. The fact that you can get him 12 quarterbacks after Dak, 10 quarterbacks after Herbert, 5 quarterbacks after Lawrence, and he's projected to be better than Lawrence and Herbert and pretty close to Dak Prescott. I think that's pretty clear that he has an insane amount of upside for almost being outside of the top 24 quarterbacks. I think it's a little crazy. We know that there's always injury concerns with him and his wide receivers. But they add Davante Adams. They improve their offensive line. They still have Puka and Kyron. If they stay healthy, would it really surprise you if he was a QB1? Because I could see that a lot. Like I could really see that. So just keep in mind with this one, the takeaway is really watch out for Matt Stafford. Keep him on your radar in the late rounds of your drafts. The fifth one has to do with some mid to early round, early round wide receivers. And there's 4 players here. We'll start off with the first 2. Jackson Smith-Njigba and Garrett Wilson. They're respectively, this is standard scoring ADPs again, just so nobody uses, well, what about their receptions, right? Because JSN will have a lot more receptions than Garrett Wilson. But JSN wide receiver 12, Garrett Wilson wide receiver 15. JSN projected for 25 more receiving yards and 2 more touchdowns. So, right, a little bit more upside there, hence a couple more picks higher. But what really makes this weird is Davante Adams at wide receiver 18 and DJ Moore at wide receiver 20. Now, DJ Moore projected for over 1,000 receiving yards, so almost 100 more than these first 2 guys, and 6.5 touchdowns, the same as JSN, a couple more than Garrett Wilson. Screams value to me, but the number 1 guy here I want to talk about is Davante Adams, wide receiver 18, 935 yards, so just a tad bit less than the guys ahead of him and DJ Moore. Touchdowns, though, 8.5. He's been a monster at scoring receiving touchdowns. And now he gets Matt Stafford. This offense has been top 8 in wide receiver targets every single season Sean McVay has been there, which I want to say is between 6 to 8 years. They've been top 8 in wide receiver targets. The passing volume is going to be there, and I think even in the red zone, I think they're going to pull off of spamming Kyron Williams inside the 5 every single time. But Vegas agrees with me, right? 8.5. That's 4 more than Wilson, 2 more than Moore and JSN. Yet he's being drafted behind 6 wide receivers behind JSN and 5 wide receivers behind Garrett Wilson. So the takeaway from this one, I'm sorry for the laggy, holy crap. The last and final one, I'm just going to go through, I don't care if I'm lagging, is J.J. McCarthy's passing touchdowns line. And I'll pop it up right here. Number 1 is Joe Burrow with 33.5, Jared Goff 29.5, Baker and Lamar 28.5, Allen and Mahomes 27.5. The next guy on the list is J.J. McCarthy. And I may even just have my own separate video for why I'm so in on J.J. McCarthy at QB 20 this season. But yeah, obviously all of these guys ahead of him are valued between QB1 to QB10. QB1 to QB6. These are the top 6 quarterbacks in fantasy football. And then there's J.J. McCarthy at QB 20, right behind them. And Kevin O'Connell running the Minnesota Vikings, they've been top 6 in passing yards each of the last 3 seasons and passing touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons. Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, Kirk Cousins, and I'm forgetting the 4th one. Oh, Sam Darnold last year. They've all averaged well over 18.4 fantasy points per game. And, I mean, all J.J. McCarthy needs to do is match that to be around a quarterback 1. Yet he's going as the QB 20 now. Obviously, we're looking for upside this late in the draft. He could come out and be bad, but there's no arguing he has a phenomenal set of weapons, a much improved offensive line, even an improved running back duo, the best offensive mind for developing quarterbacks in the entire NFL. And no quarterback has failed in this situation. And Kevin O'Connell has other seasons under his belt. Matt Stafford's Super Bowl winning season in 2021. O'Connell was the OC. He has some history with Kirk Cousins having a lot of success in Washington. when he was an offensive coordinator there. He knows what he's doing. He's going to get the best out of J.J. McCarthy. And even if he doesn't smash this passing touchdown yard line or something like that, he's going to beat his ADP of QB 20. So that's really a guy I'm keeping my eye on. Let me know if you guys enjoyed this. I'm sure I can dig into some more Vegas lines compared to ADPs and find some, I guess, errors in terms of where players are being drafted. Because obviously this isn't everything, right? There's more context that goes along. But I do think these 6 discrepancies that I pointed out are definitely worth noting. So yeah, comment down below if you want me to do a part 2 for this. Make sure you like and subscribe to help me out, putting a ton of work into this. Be doing multiple YouTube videos per week. And the next one that we're doing is my fantasy tight end tiers. So that will be out soon. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.